So thanks very much for inviting me to talk to you about contract mobilisation and indeed remobilisation. So the temptation always, whether you're starting a new contract or you're remobilising something after COVID, is to get in there and crack on and start delivering. And that can be a mistake. It's always worth, even if you just think through a mobilisation process, but the most successful contracts tend to have been well thought out and planned through. So the key elements I'm going to talk to you about today, there are a large number, but I'm not going to go through them at length. It all starts with the tender and the contract review. So you just need to check back and go through and make sure that the deliverables are still the same and what's expected and what the relevant clauses are that require you to take action through the contract, and start to extract those and put them into your project plan, build your project plan and make sure that they're addressed, because some of these things can be left aside, nobody ever looks at it, and then when something goes a little bit wrong, lo and behold, you should have been following the contract and doing X, Y, Z, and it never happened. So if there's a deliverable in there or a clause that needs to be satisfied, make sure that comes out and gets put into your plan. And then don't assume that just because that's what the state of play was in the tender and the contract, that's what the client wants. So do check the key deliverables, start that communication process and make sure that their understanding is your understanding. With respect to people, it's ideal if you can have people who go through the tender process, stay with the mobilisation process and stay with the contract with an eye on the renegotiation of the contract at the end of your agreed term. And that consistency is really important. Once you've identified the team, you've identified what's in the contract, really start to hone in on what those deliverables are and what success looks like, and then map that through the contract so that you, from the word go, you're looking from the tender and contract to say success at the end of this period will look like this, and this is what it's going to mean for us. This is the size of the prize. Then you're into the communication and reporting and governance side of things. And the most important aspect of this is, what is the purpose of the contract? What are you trying to achieve? What is the client trying to achieve? And can you put that down succinctly in a meaningful and motivational way for everybody that's involved with the contract? With respect to who's involved, map them out, do what they call a stakeholder map, and try and register who's got most interest in it and who's got the most power and importance. So you're actually, all people aren't equal, unfortunately, within this. So some people deserve more attention than others. Who are they, and what does success look like for them? What are the needs or the pains that you're trying to resolve through this contract for them? Then you're looking at the communications plan and what are the big things that you're trying to achieve for them, and how you're going to communicate, one, that you're trying to achieve it for them, and two, how you're getting there. What are the milestones along the way? And that merits then a communication strategy and plan when you're actually identifying what you're going to capture, how you're going to capture it, and how you're going to communicate that to them, in what tone of voice, in what style, what mechanisms you're going to use. And you need to check that that process is working. You're not just broadcasting, that they are listening and hearing indeed what you're saying and putting across to them. And then the metrics. So again, back for those stakeholders, what does success look like? Can you really visualize that and turn it into hard numbers, and how are you going to measure that along the way? So you don't turn around at the end of the contract and someone says, actually, it was rubbish for me. You should know along the way whether you're satisfying their needs. On the governance side of things, consistency is probably the biggest element. So ideally you'll have a dedicated project manager, but that's not enough. What if they leave? What if something happens that causes them to be removed from the contract? So you need to have a wider team that's got knowledge or involvement, and ideally both from the client side and the key stakeholder side, consistent people, and that helps build that integrated team and project team. Which leads us nicely into an element that's often ignored, and that is the team building and engagement. Successful contracts come from good people working well as a team. And it doesn't happen naturally. Some people are instinctively good at it and they build that team, but they tend to go through a process, whether they're conscious of it or not, where they build trust, where they encourage and get some really healthy conflict going through the teams and through the whole business and contract delivery, in fact. And then people are committed to achieving the success, are happy to be held accountable, and you do hold them accountable. And ultimately, it's about results. Are you delivering? The frontline delivery staff need to be supported, and they need to understand what issues they might encounter. So it's really important that you enable that to be recorded easily. There's a CCTV camera on there, not from a Big Brother perspective, but how are you going to capture issues that they bump into from previous contracts in your own business or the previous version of the contract you're delivering? What are the common issues, and has something different happened, such as COVID or anything of an unusual nature, which changes the issues they might encounter? Try and preempt that and build that into the training for those people, and they then know how to escalate those issues, those particular types of issues. You've got a path for that, which leads then nicely into big change management. So if there's a lot of issues happening, how are you going to resolve them for the longer term? Is there a process that's agreed within the governance team as to how you'll do that? It might require a change in the contract terms, for instance. So how would that happen? And how do these things get surfaced to the table and dealt with? Then you're into where most people start with their process, and that's the actual processes of the business and the resources that go with it. And you should start by mapping the process. Not we have these people, or we have this plant, we have this kit, and we're going to throw these at the contract. What is the process that's going to deliver for the client? And then what are the resources, the people, the stock, the TUPE transfer, the IT that are going to go with it and enable it? Once you've mapped those processes, what level of demand are you allowing for? Have you anticipated? And what are the peaks and troughs within that? Are you going to resource to the trough? Are you going to resource to the peak? And how are you going to handle any gaps? Maybe you've bid on a real high quality level and you're resourcing in-house to the peak, but maybe you're on a tight budget and it's all about price, and actually you resource to the trough and then you top it up with partners on an interim ad hoc basis. So once you've identified the level of resource, you have to go and get it. You have to attract them, you have to select them, you have to induct them, develop them over time, and ideally retain them. And ultimately, you might need to replace them or upgrade, however that would happen. The final point is, anyone in a good business context starts with the end in mind. So are you looking to get an extension of the contract? Is it a contract of that nature? Or are you going to exit? And you hopefully will want to do that in a graceful way. So again, back to those success measures. How can you see at the end of the contract, if you do a pre-mortem now and think, okay, what might have gone wrong? What would have gone right? What will that look like? What evidence will we have? How will we communicate that to the client? And if you are going for an extension, what's your strategy to collect that information and influence the client, show them you're doing a great job, adding great value, potential opportunities for innovation, so you may negotiate that. So on that note, I'll open up for questions.